Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the December 2021 meeting of the South Metro Regional Safety Council. I'm Steve Roth. I'm happy to be with you this morning. Julie is unable to be here this morning, so I was asked to kick off the meeting, and it's absolutely my pleasure. Hopefully everyone is getting ready for the holiday season. I have a few BWC announcements before I turn it over to Michael Kerr. For the latest information on COVID-19 in Ohio, please visit coronavirus.ohio.gov. I'm pleased to announce that BWC safety consultants, ergonomic consultants, and industrial hygienists are back in the field. If you have health and safety concerns that would be best addressed during an on-site consultation, please give us a call. The 2021-22 edition of the Safety Services Catalog is now available for download. This is the one that was traditionally mailed out to many of you. It's now virtual, so it's a downloadable document on our website. It contains links to all the detailed descriptions of the safety-related course offerings. Has a full listing of the available videos in the safety video library, and also the streaming videos that are available. So please visit bwc.ohio.gov to download this latest version of the Safety Services Catalog. For those public employers participating in the industry-specific safety program, their program year ends December 31st, just a few more weeks. All loss prevention activities must be completed before the end of this year. If you still need program credit, please consider attending some of the upcoming distance learning or online courses. What we have available yet this month from the Division of Safety and Hygiene, we have two webinars. One later yet today. We have the Public Employer Risk Reduction Program Record Keeping. So that's the PERP Record Keeping webinar, and that's today at 1:30 p.m. We also have a Special Investigations and Overview webinar on December 14th. So that's December 14th, a Special Investigations webinar, an overview of their operations. We have three upcoming virtual training classes. One is a long one. It's the Electrical Hazard Recognition and Abatement class, and that runs all of next week, December 14th through the 17th. So that's a multi-day course, excellent course if you're looking to gain some knowledge on electrical hazards and how to abate those risks. On December 14th, we're also doing a half-day class, Respirators, Do We Need Them? And then we're going to conclude the year on December 16th with Hazard Communications, a half-day workshop. If you're interested in attending any of these courses, the webinars, please visit the BWC Learning Center at bwclearningcenter.com to register. Our speaker, I'm happy to introduce our speaker this morning. I've known Michael for, well, he probably doesn't remember this, but I know him for like over 20 years now. So it's been my pleasure. Michael is the managing partner of MAKSolve LLC, a local environmental and safety consulting firm. Michael just celebrated 13 years in private practice following a career that encompassed 10 years in the Royal Navy. Love saying Royal Navy. A journeyman electrician, maintenance mechanic in the aluminum and manufacturing industry, a mine safety specialist in Richmond, Virginia, and then he moved to Ohio and became the director for governmental affairs for a local Kettering firm, where he spent much of his time in Washington lobbying for the circuit board and plating industry. This last career experience opened his eyes to the small business challenges and hence steered him to assist the small business communities for the past 20 years as a consultant in the environmental and occupational safety fields. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Environmental Engineering and a minor in Occupational Safety from Kennedy Western University and a Master's in Science in Environmental Safety and Health Management from the University of Findlay. He also holds the Certified Hazardous Materials Manager designation at the master's level and the Advanced Safety Certificate for the National Safety Council. Please join me in welcoming Michael. Michael, it's all yours.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate that introduction. My God, I didn't realize that I've known you that long, but we've worked together on various projects over the years, and so and good friendship too, even though you're now working for the BWC, but whatever. I'm just kidding. Hey, it's great to be back, and I appreciate the Safety Council inviting me back. As Steve alluded to, my role is outreach and trying to help clients and safeguarding the clients from the regulatory environment that's out there, safeguarding them in the perspective of sharing information, supporting their safety programs, and training employees and things along those lines. I really do enjoy giving you the OSHA update every single year. This one, which will update for 2021, 2022, will provide you all with some insight as to the direction of federal OSHA. Remember, it is federal OSHA. We are a federal program, not a state program. So I will also just be focusing upon the federal OSHA and what they're doing in their strategic plan for 2022. And I'll also focus, and I apologize to those of you in the Ohio maritime industry and the agricultural industry and construction. We don't focus upon that. While there is a community out there, we tend to focus on general industry. So what I plan to do here today is basically tell you a little tiny bit about my company, 30 seconds on that, even though Steve has alluded to it. Give you some OSHA statistics that are very, very valid right now. Share with you what OSHA is going to do or hopes to do in the coming year and in the coming fiscal year, which I'll be started in September and will conclude next September. I want to give you some insight as to rules that are on the horizon that you might be interested in better preparing your workforce for. Specifically, I'm going to talk about those in the pre-rule stage, give you some insight into ones that are being proposed, and also those that have been finalized, and talk about some long-term actions of OSHA and where their primary focus is going to be. We will talk about, briefly talk about fines, because those are rather significant, and I'll explain as to why they continue to change. And we'll summarize by basically, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell you what I told you. And I think that's the best route to go. So welcome. Appreciate you spending your time to listen to me sharing some insight regarding what's going on in OSHA. Our company is very small here in Centerville. As an environmental engineer, and that's me right there. I've got some geologists, some scientists, safety professional, and we do occupational safety and health. In fact, about 2 hours after I finish up here, I'm heading out to Etna, Ohio to train some folks on how to drive forklift safety. So we do occupational safety and health and environmental due diligence. We pull underground storage tanks around town, and we inject bugs into the ground as well to remediate sites that are contaminated. So that's just a little brief on my company. Some OSHA statistics I'd like to share with you is that the budget for OSHA has changed. You'll recall, if you kept the slides from a couple of years ago, that in 2020, OSHA had some 1,839 federal inspectors. Their budget was about $585,000. Last year, they increased those full-time employees to 1,884, and they had a budget of around about $591 million. In the 2022 budget, OSHA requested and was awarded dollars, and enough dollars to go and hire an additional 362 full-time employees. And OSHA now has a budget of $664.5 million to go out into the workplace over the coming year and inspect the workplaces. And they anticipate in 2022, even in light of or in spite of COVID, they hope to visit some 37,000 workplaces, which is a significant increase from 2020 when it was only 21,500. Their focus, and this is interesting because I think it's principally directed by the current administration, and this comes straight out of the OSHA strategic plan. OSHA will focus their attention on workplaces where the color of skin, ethnicity are prevalent, and where English is not spoken. I will point out that OSHA does provide a lot of its guidance documents in numerous languages, and they're available for download off the OSHA website. They're also going to go ahead and target organizations that have 20 plus employees that are not exactly doing the right thing and are not reporting correctly and basically are recalcitrant with respect to their reporting obligation to OSHA. They're still going to look at trenching and excavation activities because unfortunately throughout the United States we are still seeing an increase in fatalities in that area. And you will recall from my presentation last year that there is a national emphasis program in place where OSHA is focusing a lot of attention upon those entities that go ahead and conduct trenching and or excavation. So, sad part, let's just focus on that. Unfortunately, in the last year from September to September, 31 workers died in the state of Ohio. Goes without saying, that's 31 too many. I've not reviewed every single one of those fatalities. I reviewed about 10 of them, and of those 10, yeah, they were accidental, but a couple of them could have been prevented had policies and procedures been in place. Unfortunately, even here in our Dayton region, we had one fatality. And again, you can go on the OSHA website, you can zero in on this and find out who that was and where it happened. OSHA just recently, in October, posted their top 10 cited standards. Again, I'm focusing upon general industry. And so when we look at general industry, what's interesting is respiratory protection has risen to the forefront. It's now #1 for general industry. And what I'm pleased to see is that hazard communication has dropped to #2. Hazard communication within the top 10 of all industries was always around about #1. Well, now it's dropped down to #2. In third place, lockout and tagout. In fourth place, power industrial trucks. And then finally, in fifth place, machinery and machine guarding. So within general industry, those are 5 areas where OSHA has cited, has executed, or conducted, I should say, not executed, inspections, and those 5 programmatic areas have risen to the top. Hazard communication, I'm glad to see that's dropping because since 2012, when OSHA made a major revision to the hazard communication standard and provided a lot of industry with information that they can use to make this adoption of HazCom really easy. Organizations, companies never really embraced it, and so it was #1 for many, many years. Good to see it's going down to #2. So with that, those statistics, I'll continue on with the strategic plan for 2021-2022. And not unlike what you hear in the news and the media these days, where we talk about this administration's interest in build back a better agency, we're seeing an increase in whistleblower investigations. That will happen. They are going to go ahead and eliminate the Susan Harwood Training Grant. They're going to fund it a little tiny bit, so it's not going to be totally eliminated. And they're going to focus a little bit more on IT and training modernization, using more of the cloud-based systems. But they are going to maintain and still focus on a robust and targeted enforcement program, looking at egregious organizations that are egregiously violating safety standards, and also persistent violators. Those folks that, even though they've been cited once, OSHA comes back to check to see whether that program has been adopted, implemented, and if it hasn't, then becomes willful, obviously, a repeat, and those violations will increase accordingly. The President's management agenda, which includes the Build Back a Better Agency, what they're going to do there is they're going to address a changing and diverse workplace and associated workforce. They are going to, as I said, increase their focus on whistleblower protection. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And again, as we've heard from the administration in a number of different areas, here within OSHA, we're looking at their focus in their strategic plan on the demographically changing workforce, the diversity of that workforce, and focusing on the impact of economics and geography on the workforce itself. And as I said, within the administration's American Job Plan, we see an increase in penalties and we see an increase in inspectors. The reason they're going to do this IT modernization, if you will, is to better streamline the agency, allow the customer base, if you will, organizations to provide OSHA with information via the cloud, through the internet, and make it easier, if you will, to submit data to OSHA, and therefore more streamlined in that manner. It'll be more consistent as well, be more efficient, more efficiency. Even though they're getting more dollars this year, they're still trying to improve their efficiency across the OSHA spectrum in a number of different ways. And again, the focus is still on small business and how small business can be helped out, not only by OSHA, but in association with Bureau of Workers' Compensation groups around the country and even in Ohio. I want to talk about what OSHA has also done. OSHA received money under the CARES Act. They received about $5.5 million. And they're going to use a lot of that money to provide small businesses with COVID-19 guidance. They're going to publish documentation. They're going to put it on the internet. That $5.5 million will also be utilized to print documentation, translate it into other languages, and from an inspection perspective, OSHA is going to purchase some equipment, lab equipment, to support that COVID activity under the CARES Act. Even though it's a federal agency, it also got money under the ARP Act. In fact, over $100 million was directed to OSHA. And again, OSHA is going to use that money to focus on folks that don't have access to COVID information, COVID guidance documents, or are dealing with COVID issues in the workplace, but they'll be focusing on those vulnerable and hard to reach people, hard to reach workers. They're going to use some of that money to increase enforcement, increase whistleblower protections, buy some more lab equipment, as I stated, and they're going to provide some compliance assistance, enhanced compliance assistance, because they're getting this money to go ahead and help small businesses and medium-sized businesses. Then you've got some internal issues that they're going to be spending some of that money on, HR issues, to better provide OSHA staff with access to enhanced human resource applications and things along those lines. So again, within the OSHA strategic plan in 2021 through 2022, we see an increase in OSHA's enforcement presence. We see them responding to increased employer and worker requests for help. That's in the assistance program, the compliance assistance. There will be an increase in staff. 350-some people will be hired. Some of those will be assistant directors, health and safety officers. They're also going to hire some compliance assistance specialists whose sole job will be to assist small businesses with their compliance activities. They are going to increase whistleblower investigators. And you may recall from my comments last year, we were involved in a whistleblower action up here in Vandalia. And I can assure you, you do not want to go through a whistleblower investigation whereby an employee has filed a whistleblower complaint against your organization. It's intense, it's time-consuming, it's costly, and will take a lot of your time. So be aware of that. Again, within their strategic plan, they're focusing on enhanced rulemaking, generation of some guidance documents. They're also going to give some more money out of their budget to boost up state plans. This is the proposed rule stage. In the proposed rule stage, those of you affected by process safety management, that is in the pre-rule stage. Emergency response, OSHA's looking at revising the emergency response standard. Also mechanical power presses, and we've seen an uptick in workplace violence, especially in the healthcare facilities and in areas where social assistance is provided. So OSHA is in the pre-rule stage for a standard regarding prevention of violence in the workplace, in the healthcare and the social assistance environments. Also, lead blood levels, they're looking at changing that, and employer exposure to heat. So those are in the pre-rule stage. In the proposed rule stage, I guess it goes without saying that as a result of what just transpired with the pandemic, with COVID, OSHA's got a proposed rule for infectious diseases. The communication tower safety, which went from pre-rule, is now in proposed, and probably will be finished in the next couple of years. So you those in the communication industry and have cell towers and such, you might want to take a look at that proposed rule. One thing I do want to bring to everyone's attention here is that, and I mentioned it earlier, OSHA updated, made a monumental change to the OSHA Hazard Communication Standard 1910.1200 in 2012. And that was the rationale behind that was the global harmonization standard, the global harmonization standard on chemicals in the workplace, which was adopted globally, had not been adopted or embraced by OSHA, but in 2012 they did. However, in 2012, the major revisions to the Hazard Communication Standard came out of revision 3 of the GHS. Well, OSHA hasn't changed since 2012, the HAZCOM standard, albeit the GHS has conducted 5 revisions globally to the GHS. So OSHA is about ready and is in its proposed rule stage, and I see that probably on a fast track here. They will embrace all of revision 7 of the GHS and part of revision 8 of the GHS, probably in early 2022, even though it's in the proposed rule stage right now. I think it will get to final pretty darn quickly. It's been a long time coming. Lockout and tagout is being proposed to be revised. Powered industrial trucks. Again, some of these standards, if you recall, were written in 1998, 2001, and there's a lot of changes. So they do warrant revision. Walking and working surfaces will also be changed. The crystalline silica standard, which was revised recently, there's some changes and modifications that will be coming through to address needed changes to that standard. And then finally, tracking of workplace injuries and illnesses. Again, OSHA is looking at leveraging the cloud, looking at more transparency to the general public of what workplaces look like from a safety and accident perspective, and they will be expanding their dissemination of that information through better tracking of workplace injuries and illnesses and getting it out there. In final rule stage, and this is where at the outset I feel, and it might have been just because of 2020, we had a pandemic, OSHA's focus, even though they did do some inspections, I think from a regulatory perspective, from an administrative perspective, they didn't really focus on all these. So you see these pre-rule and proposed rule stages of these documents, which I think are safety and health related. What I do not see, unfortunately, personally that is in the final rule stage. These will be published very, very shortly. OSHA has finalized procedures for handling retaliation complaints under the Taxpayer First Act. Procedures for handling complaints under the Whistleblower Protection Act. Discrimination rules under the OSHA Act. And then you've got this emergency temporary standard for COVID-19, which they wrote, they published it, but then it's been put into a legal quagmire right now. They've also gone ahead and finalized procedures for handling complaints under the Anti-Money Laundering Act and another one under the Criminal Antitrust Anti-Retaliation Act. I do not see a safety focus in any of those myself. I would rather them look at, getting the communication tower safety standard up and revised, the hazard communication standard revised, lockout and tag out, powered industrial trucks. Focus upon that and get them into the final stage instead of focusing on some of these other items. That's my personal opinion. So that's where OSHA is with respect to pre-rule, proposed rule, and final rules to give you some sense of what's coming down the pike. We talked a little bit about violations. We talked a little tiny bit about citations, the number of citations and things along those lines. And I just want to remind everybody that under a previous administration back in 2015, it was realized that across the regulatory spectrum, not only under OSHA, that agencies, EPA, FAA, FDA, you name it, all these federal agencies were not increasing their penalties under their enforcement actions to the regulated community. So in 2015, the Federal Civil Penalties Inflation Adjustment Act was passed in Congress. And basically what that did was to go ahead and improve effectiveness of civil monetary penalties, and through that maintain some level of deterrent and basically catch up. Through 2015, they said, okay, well, inflation this and cost of living that, so we've got to play catch up. And so it also stated that they're going to make annual adjustments for inflation. So since 2015, every single year, OSHA penalties have increased. So today, under the current administration, serious violations, pay attention to this, $13,653 for serious violations. Other than serious violations, the same. How many of you can look in your workplace right now and see the OSHA employee poster on the wall somewhere in your workplace? If you cannot see that, I strongly urge you to go online as soon as this presentation is over with. Go to www.osha.gov, go to publications, and download a copy of the OSHA poster. Because if you don't have it in your workplace, and I don't care whether it's an office, a doctor's office, a manufacturing plant, a retail outlet, a CPA establishment, it doesn't matter to me. Put that poster up, because if OSHA, for whatever reason, was to come and visit, you could get cited under the standard for posting and get a violation against you with a monetary penalty of around about $13,653. So again, for the sake of 5 minutes of effort to jump on the OSHA website and download that document and post it in your workplace, you could save yourself some money. What's interesting is under this, the Federal Civil Penalties Adjustment Act, willful or repeated violations has risen exponentially. Typically now, willful or repeated violations will result in a maximum of $136,532 per violation. That's an increase, a couple of $1,000s over the previous year. So if I can summarize here, basically OSHA has not gone away. OSHA plans during the coming year to publish 5 final rules, and I told you they call them final rules, but I don't see how they, on a day-to-day basis, they affect us in the workplace. Sure, whistleblower, because I've seen that. They're looking at 4 proposed rules, which I think is very beneficial to us, and hopefully they will go to final very, very quickly. They're also going to hold a SBREFA. A SBREFA is a Small Business Regulatory Fairness Act panel or group of folks that are going to focus upon workplace violence. There's been a significant uptick in workplace violence. And again, as I mentioned earlier, in the medical community. We've seen a lot of that. OSHA's change in focus, talked a little bit about that. And what is that? Looking at establishments, organizations, manufacturing plants, whether large, medium, or small, and they're focusing on inclusivity, disadvantaged organizations, where there's a high level of underserved communities and communities of color. They will continue to enforce all of the OSHA standards. They're also going to increase, as I said earlier, small business outreach, but also focusing on WBEs and MBEs, women business enterprises and minority business enterprises, and helping those small businesses come into compliance with mandated and mandatory OSHA standards. And finally, they will go ahead and continue to publish. And I can only tell you that I go on the OSHA website about every other day, and their publications section is incredible. There's a lot of information there that you can download and print or order hard copy of to assist you in your compliance efforts. So to summarize here, OSHA's not gone away. I doubt whether they ever will. They've got a lot more money than they had in 2021, in fiscal 2021. They've got more inspectors. They're focusing upon whistleblower. Their enforcement activity will continue. And as I said here, training and outreach to small business enterprises. So with that, I'm open to, I'll close my comments, and I'm open to any questions that any of you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. In the emergency temporary standard, I mean, I know that the court's put some injunctions in place on the COVID-19 rules. I guess what's your feeling on how that's going to play out?
You want my personal opinion? Okay, I mean, come on. The rollout of COVID and the response to the pandemic has been disastrous. I think that's both a personal and a professional observation. Businesses are being pulled in so many different directions. They're being required to do this, they're being required to do that. It's different from one county to another county, from one state to another state. It's an absolute quagmire, and they really don't know what to do. I think OSHA overstepped its bounds in putting this emergency temporary standard out there because it wasn't very clear. If you read it, it's very erroneous. I mean, I've read it a couple of times and I still don't quite understand it. But I guess from a cautionary perspective, this will go through the courts. And no matter what happens, I might suggest that employers, as they have done since March of 2020, embrace the fact that you have a personal, you have a moral, put the legal obligation, legal, I say, as mandated by OSHA, to provide a safe and healthy working environment for your employees. Look at it from a moral perspective. You're a member of your workforce. How would you like to be treated in this? Do your best. I doubt, and OSHA may beat me up the side of the head on this, but I doubt whether OSHA would enforce this standard to the point of issuing violations if you are making a concerted and visible effort to provide a safe and healthy working environment for your employees. Social distancing, hand sanitizer, wearing of masks, segregation in the workplace. We did it, and we're only 9 employees. For the last almost 2 years, 18, 19 months, we did it. We were successful. We had a mask mandate, so to speak, and everything worked out. It worked out well. We limited access to the office by UPS drivers, FedEx, the Postal Service. Couldn't go any further than about 3 feet inside our office. It's not difficult, but you do have to put some of these protections in place that are suggested by the CDC. OSHA putting that standard out, I think just muddied the waters. Steve, the only thing I would add to this is if anybody would like to receive a copy, I'm happy to send it on over to you, and also a copy of the OSHA 2021-2022 strategic plan so folks can see it in depth. And obviously I just hit on the high notes here, but there's a lot of other information in that strategic plan that might be of value to organizations. So I'm happy to share that with you.
That would be great, Michael. Thank you. We'll make sure that Deanna gets that at the Safety Council and she can get that out to everyone. That would be fantastic. Thanks again, Michael, for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you with us at least once a year. It is a highlight of the year. For everyone else, have a great holiday season, and we'll see you next month, January 13th. We'll have William Nitsky, who is the Director of Safety at the 88th Air Base Wing at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So until then, happy holidays.